The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. The app is simple. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Sports app today and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Hi, this is Chris from Amateur Traveler, and you're in the right place, but this is not an Amateur Traveler episode. Jason, my podcast brother from the Zero to Travel podcast, and I are doing a feed exchange where we're putting one of his episodes in my feed and one of my episodes in his feed. The particular episode that you're going to get of Zero to Travel today is one of his transition to travel stories. Zero to Travel talks a lot about how to get out on the road. Not as much destinations, more about how-tos. And this is Transition to Travel before and after with Sophia and Teague. I hope you enjoy it.
Today we have an episode that started it all. The Transition to Travel series has been near and dear to my heart for a few reasons. First of all, they take a long time to make. I interview an individual or a couple before they have gone on a big trip, when they're in the middle of a huge life change, either quitting their job to travel, selling their home, maybe all of the above. And then I catch up with them months or sometimes longer down the road and interview them after they've spent a good chunk of time out traveling the world. In this case, they had traveled the world for a year. You really get to see if some of the fears beforehand were legitimate, if the idea of what travel was going to be really matched up with the reality of it, and you get to get a deeper understanding of the transformative power that travel has just by listening to one couple's story. That's all coming at you today in this interview. Plus, I am going to answer the question, how do you use big picture thinking to accomplish all of your travel goals and life goals for that matter? I'll share what I mean by big picture thinking and why that has been so helpful for me. I'll also share a book recommendation, something that very much relates to this episode, a book I'm reading right now. And of course, I'll leave you with a quote. All of this and more coming in today's show right now. So buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey there, it's Jason with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. And I have been heavily addicted to small cinnamon buns lately. These little small cinnamon buns you can buy in the store. I've had 3 of those and a coffee now. So I'm all charged up, fired up, ready to bring you this episode. What are you munching on? What are you doing? What's up with you? Hope you're doing well today, and I'm so excited to bring you this highlight from the archive. I have a whole series of shows I've done around the transition to travel. If you've listened to the show for a while, you know I'm a bit obsessed with this whole process of the transition, not what you were doing before and ending that, not the next thing you do, but that middle part that feels messy for a lot of us, right? You're trying to kind of figure things out. There might be a lot of fears involved when you're transitioning from one thing to the next in life, whatever that is. In this case today, we're talking about that transition to travel, which a lot of us have to make if you want to travel long-term or full-time. You're going to have to give up a certain lifestyle. If it's a status quo type of lifestyle where you're settled down and you might have to give up your house and your job and things like that, or maybe you're giving something else up. A lot around that whole process of making the transition. And that's why I started putting these types of shows together, even though they take a long time to make, because I wanted to give you an audio snapshot of what it's like when somebody makes that decision, how they're feeling before a trip, and then how they're feeling months into a trip or at the end of a trip, and putting it all into one podcast. And this was the show that started it all. Now, let me tell you more about today's interview. You're going to hear an audio snapshot of one couple who took the time to be interviewed by me right before they were leaving on their trip, after they'd quit their jobs and done all of the stuff it takes to transition to that long-term travel lifestyle. And they were getting ready to travel for a year. They weren't sure where it was going to lead. They had an open-ended ticket, and they were totally open-minded. They quit their jobs, and they were leaving. And it takes so much to get to that point. And if you listen to this show, you know I'm fascinated by this transition to travel, that time leading up to actually rearranging your life to travel the world. And it's a journey in and of itself. It really is. Yes, you learn so much through travel about the world, about cultures, about yourself, but you also learn so much rearranging your life just to get to the point of travel, because there are so many different themes involved. If you think about it, you're talking about minimizing your life, maybe, mentally and physically detaching from some things you own, maybe even detaching your identity from your job. If you have to quit your job and leave, what does that mean? Who are you without your job? And all these questions that come up as you go through this. So I really wanted to paint the picture of how travel can transform somebody for better or worse, or just share that experience in a way that was unique, in a way that was not done before that I know of. So I got this couple to agree to be interviewed, and again, interviewed them right before their trip, after they'd been through all this. And then a year later, over a year later, actually, after they had taken this trip around the world, and you'll get to hear how they changed, what they learned about travel and living on the road. And they're going to share those tips with you as well. How they saved on their budget, how you can pack better, all the things that you learn through experience. And it's so fresh because they were just coming off the trip. So you're doing some crazy time traveling today, as I mentioned at the top, because you're going to be hearing them before they left and then a year later, all in one episode. And it's just a great opportunity to see how travel changes people and how it changed at least this one couple, and really better understand that transformation that can take place and the fears that take place beforehand. And, were they matching up to the reality? And this is another question, do the ideas of long-term travel or the nomadic lifestyle match up with the reality of it? I mean, I don't think the idea of anything can ever truly match up to the reality of it, because it's always a different experience, but you're going to get to really see how it matched up for them. Was it close? Was it far off? There's a lot to explore in this episode. I know you're going to dig it. Let me know what you think about it. I want to do more episodes like this, but I would need your help to do that, because I have no way of knowing who out there in the listening community is involved in the transition to travel portion of travel, that journey before the journey right now. Who's thinking about it and getting ready to potentially quit their job, or who maybe out there has just quit their job or has just, sold their house, or who is kind of mulling it over, at night. Maybe it's keeping you up at night, like, should I do this thing? And what would that mean for my life? And how am I going to save money and find the time? And what am I going to do with my stuff? And all of those things. I need to talk to you. please get in touch. You can email me, jason@zerototravel.com. I always also leave a link to a place where you can easily leave me a voice message. I'll send you one back if you do that. And if you're going through this transition, you want to share your story, you want to inspire others, help others in the community, feel free to offer yourself up as a guest. Okay, let's slip and slide into this interview now, and I will see you on the other side. Don't forget to stick around. We're going to talk about big picture thinking, and I'm going to share a book that I'm reading that's been really enjoyable for me and why I'm reading it, plus a quote to leave you with at the end. Stick around for all that. I'll see you on the other side, my friend.
Votre attention, s'il vous plaît. Nous vous informons que la circulation normale du RER E est...
Today I'm excited to share another transition to travel story from two people in this community. When I say transition to travel, I'm talking about the process of leaving a job and or totally changing your life around to accommodate more travel. It can be difficult, it can be scary, it can be intimidating, or insert any number of other adjectives. Making that leap is a huge decision, and I think it's important to share these stories because they can help us gain new perspectives and learn what we can do better during our own transition. So I'm thrilled to welcome Sophia and Teague here to the podcast. Welcome, my friends.
Hi, Jason.
Hi, thanks for having us.
I'm thrilled to have you, and I met Sophia a while back via email because you sent me a note. After I read it, I was like, oh my God, I need to talk to these two. And this is going to be really interesting because we're going to talk to you guys now before your trip, and we'll get into that. And then we're going to talk to you like a few months from now when you're already into your trip, so we can really get the reality of it, you know, and the expectations and where they met and everything like that. So, you know, you wrote in your email, you said the ensuing transition from, I think I want to travel, and instead to a lifestyle that facilitates that travel has been, and you used a bunch of adjectives: daunting, liberating, frustrating, exhilarating, grueling, nothing short of an adventure in itself. Making the decision to go from zero to travel is nothing if not a bet you place on yourself. What pushed you over the edge to bet on yourself in this way?
And I've also put this in the email that at the time that we sort of decided initially to travel, we both worked like all the time. I mean, we lived together and we really never saw each other because I was a personal trainer at the time. So I woke up at like 5 a.m. I was gone. Teague was a prosecutor, so he's gone, you know, until late at night, sometimes if he had a trial. And I think we just realized that we were kind of unhappy and that there's just had to be something else.
Yeah, it felt to me kind of like, did the thing you're supposed to do. You go to school, you get a grown-up job, and now you're doing that grown-up job, and you get about a year into it, and you're like, wait a second, this isn't quite what I thought it would be. This isn't really what I want to do with my life, and I'm not ready to do the whole mortgage, lifetime in debt, you know, anchored down, workaholic kind of thing, the path that we were sort of on. And it'd been something we'd been talking about sort of casually, like people do, you know, everyone's always like, oh, someday I'll travel, someday. And everyone says that. And so it went from us being those people to being like, this is kind of miserable.
We don't like this.
We don't like this. Let's travel. And then from there, it just sort of slowly grew. Mm-hmm. Sophia did most of the research, and we realized it was something we actually could do. I think a sort of watershed moment for us, though, was Vagabonding by Rolf Potts. We both read that, and we have the audiobook, and we just sort of listened to that.
I would listen to that book on my ride at 5:30 a.m., my half-hour drive to the gym that I worked at, that I was so unhappy at, and listen to stories of travel and travel quotes. And it was before I'd gotten into podcasts, so I mean, you just get a sense that like there's something else out there.
Yeah. And so that's it.
When are you guys leaving? Because just to put some context around this, because we're talking to you like a couple weeks before you leave.
Yep. So we actually leave the city that we're in right now, Albuquerque, New Mexico, in 6 days.
6 days.
Yeah. So we're kind of in that final mad rush of selling, like taking stuff to Savers and Craigslisting it, and then we leave the country on November 9th.
But when you guys made the original decision, how long ago was that?
It was in July of 2015.
Okay. And we're recording right now. It's October 2016. October 24th, 2016 is when we're recording this.
And originally when we had, because when we first talked about travel, I think Teague was a little bit less on board than I was. I knew that we were going to do it. Like, we're going, there's no question. But he, had gone to law school. And I think he was kind of like, well, and I think we had a conversation where Teague's like, well, if we waited until, if we waited 2 years, think of how much money we could save.
Right.
And I said, no, 1 year. And he's like, oh, but we could. And all right, 1 year and like 2 months.
Yeah.
That's the compromise that we landed
And then
on.
I started doing some of the reading and realizing how possible that was. I just, before if you don't know anything about any of this stuff, it just seems so daunting and so impossible. The idea that you could go on the amount of money we're talking about going on just seemed crazy to me. And now that I know that that's a lot more possible, it was a pretty, I don't know if you didn't really talk me into it, because it's one of those things I've always talked about doing, but didn't ever make concrete plans for. And Sophia was kind of the catalyst that helped me make concrete plans.
The story she told in the email was one of the things that got me about what you guys can tell. You were exhausted on the porch in the middle of the summer one day, and you guys would come home from work and kick it with a beer there. And tell me about the conversations that took place on the porch that summer.
We'd come home from work. It was like the sun was setting. It was like a Friday or something. And we had our beer, and we're both just sort of talking about our work weeks and how tired we are. And I think I said, like, I hope we travel someday. And he goes, yeah, people do that. I think there's some people who do that in the world, which now seems ridiculous because we know that there are so many people who do it, and it's not really as fringe as we thought. And I said, well, maybe I want to go to Europe for like 3 months next summer. And Teague's like, well, I want to go to Europe. And I was like, well, that's not going to work because you have a job. How are you going to get time off? And he goes, well, I'd quit my job, but we'd have to go for like a year. And that was a moment where I was like, oh yeah, let's do that. That's way better than what I had planned.
Forget this sort of temporary 3-month trip situation.
Yeah.
Why would anybody do that when, we can just go for a year or two? And I'm grateful to him because I never would have maybe had the courage to come up with that plan on my own. So I think having someone to kind of like give you a more ambitious perspective can be really, why do I have to just go for 3 months? I can go for a year. Yeah, totally.
And I think in a lot of ways we kind of perfect stormed each other, where we were the right people at the right time. And we both kind of came up with the plan that neither one of us would probably be brave enough to do on our own.
That's cool that you guys have each other for support in that way. That says a lot about your relationship together. So you mentioned earlier, Teague, adult jobs, I think was the term you used. How long have you guys had your adult jobs, as we'll call them?
I graduated law school in December of 2014 here in New Mexico. I took the bar in February, and in April I started working at the DA's office. And so I was there about 18 months. It's one of those things, now that I've had a little bit of distance, I'm 2 weeks into my unemployment. First week was
fun
kind of
employment. Fun employment.
Fun employment. I guess I'm just starting my second week.
Yeah.
Today's the beginning of, normally at this time I'd be sitting in a courtroom right now.
This is way better.
This is way better. I don't have to wear a tie for this. But I
no
was
dress
there,
code for this podcast.
No,
That's true.
It would have been great if we had, though.
Yeah, I should have dressed up. I feel underdressed. But I had my grown-up job for about 18 months. It's one of those jobs out of law school a lot of people do because they toss you right in. You're doing an insane amount of work. You rack up experience really fast, and it kind of burns you out. You deal with some really horrific stuff. I enjoyed it. I got to do a lot of trials. All the cool lawyer stuff people think about when they think of lawyers, that's what I got to do. And it was a lot of fun, but it wears on you. So it's been about 18 months and I'm ready to kind of switch gears a little bit.
I think also we both had the sense, so Teague's about to be 29, I'm 27, we're creeping towards our 30s. And I think we had this sense of like, well, we're getting older now. Like we gotta get those jobs, gotta probably, get married and have a house and get some cars and
all those things you're supposed to do for some reason.
Yeah.
Again, it's like going to Europe for 3, like, well, oh yeah, like I don't have to do that. I can do a different thing and that's totally fine too. So I think that like his career path was from a time, a year and a half ago when we thought like that's what we had to do, is we had to sort of do the conventional thing.
But it's hard because you're you're both invested in different ways. I mean, Sophia, like I'm sure in your career, you're invested in some way, whether it's your clients or like just the time you've put in to build up whatever it is that you have. And Teague, you went to law school, which is a huge expense. What do you think about the idea of kind of hitting reset and cutting the cord on what you've done to this point? Has that been difficult, like emotionally?
Not really, because I think it's likely I'll go back at some point. The type of job I had is sort of a first job out of school that a lot of people do, and people tend to stay there a year, maybe 2 years, and then they move on. So it was about time for me to go anyway. So I'm sort of looking at this as one option, as sort of a gap year, that if we go and have a year and we want to come home, then I can very easily pick it right back up. If we go out and we come across some crazy opportunity and I never come back, which is what I'm kind of hoping for, then that's fine too. And, no harm, no foul. It was a ton of work. I invested a lot in it. I fortunately don't have any debt, which is a big deal. That would be impossible to travel with. But yeah, I don't feel that bad about letting it go for a while. I kind of miss who I was before I got into all that, and I'm getting to sort of become that person a little bit more again.
I've got a lot to say about this because this is definitely one of those transition things that no one tells you about. I was supposed to be unemployed by the time we recorded this podcast. I have struggled with putting in my notice.
She waited till the last possible
I waited until the last day.
Why? Is that because you wanted to make extra income, or because you just didn't want to sort of face that music?
I think it's one of the things that you never hear about because everybody's like, oh yeah, I quit my job and I traveled. But I think it's facing the music. I'm about to be unemployed. My whole life, my self-worth is on my ability to bring in an income and be that adult. And so I have really struggled with going to my boss and saying, I'm going to quit to be unemployed and travel to Asia and Europe for a year. It really was terrifying.
Have you done it yet?
I did do it. Because I had to, because we have plane tickets.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, what did the conversation go like compared to what maybe you thought how it was going to go?
I kind of thought that there would be some pushback or that maybe they wouldn't believe me. And so I went and I said, okay, I'm leaving. And they said, well, why? And I said, well, I'm going to go travel. And all my bosses were like, that's amazing. Yeah. That's incredible.
So they actually, it was well received.
Yeah. Oh, so well. Yeah. And the other employees who were like, oh, well, what are you going to do for money? What do you do? And my boss defended me. She was like, oh, I'm sure she's saved. And when she comes back, she can just get a fresh start. That sounds great. Great. Do that. And I was shocked. I'm judging me more than my employers are. They're like, go, be free. And I'm like, but don't you need me?
Well, I mean, you brought up a good point about, I think that can be one of the big struggles is having so much invested in terms of your identity to what you do. It feels like, okay, well, if I'm not doing this thing, then what am I? Who am I?
Yeah,
That was my last week. First couple of days of last week, I just sort of wandered around the house, freaking out about cleaning and packing, just because, who am I? Who am I? I'm this person, just wandering around, not getting anything done.
His second day of unemployment was a really rough day for us, as individuals and as a couple, because he was very, I think, a little panicked.
It was a little panicky, just because I don't think of myself as I'm a lawyer. I haven't lived my whole life wanting to be a lawyer. It's just something I ended up doing, and I enjoy it, but I didn't ever intend for that to just be who I am. But in the course of that kind of work, it just sort of absorbs you and you don't even realize it. And suddenly when that's not there and you're suddenly having to be a person outside of that, it's just whoa, it's been a year since I saw myself in the mirror and had an honest conversation with myself. So it was frightening.
And how did that conversation go?
It was me working on calming myself down and trying to accept that it's a process, that it's going to take a while for me, I think, to fully go back to, I don't want to go completely back to who I was before all this, but I want to take those parts of me that law school and working as a lawyer killed, or at least really beat down. And those parts of me I liked, I want to kind of grow back. And I think it's going to be a bit of a process. So that conversation was sort of realizing that that's going to take a while. And that's great. I mean, I got time. There's no rush.
I think maybe that's the other thing we didn't anticipate is that you think of it as like you make the decision to travel and then you travel. And there's like a weird in between space where you're really wrestling with what that actually means.
Well, this is why these stories are so great, because there are all these steps and everybody's got their own journey. I know you mentioned in the email just how much value you see in this journey, and I feel the same way. That's why I like to share them. Look, Teague, like you can say, you hadn't had an honest conversation with yourself and all this time, and if that's the only thing that came out of this, even over the last couple of weeks, it was probably worth it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
We're staying. We figured it out. It's good.
Well, I mean, also, like, I think people associate the trip with like, oh, this is going to be this journey of like self-discovery and a new chapter and all this thing, because it's such a physical barrier too. Like you like leave the country, say, and you show up in a new place and you're like, okay, it is almost like hitting the reset button. Like you're literally in a new surrounding, you're in a different place, and you're like, okay, we can start fresh and figure stuff out. But like what gets lost is like how much stuff I think you figure out leading up to that.
Definitely. Yeah, well said. Definitely.
Yeah. And I felt that a lot in like getting my big task since I've been unemployed is to like wrap up getting rid of all the stuff I haven't gotten rid of.
I had a car that I was in debt for.
Oh man, that was
and I loved my car, Jason. I loved it. I still love it.
Yeah.
It was a little Honda Fit. Whenever I see one go by, I'm like, oh.
I just sold my car too. I felt the same way about it. It was a Honda Element. Yeah. So, I mean, what are some of the things that you guys are excited about exploring? I mean, you mentioned, okay, I want to, like Teague, you said, I want to get back to maybe some of the things that like my education as a lawyer killed, like, which sounds so like hard.
It's a little melodramatic.
But you're just being honest. I mean, and it is kind of sad in a way, like, but like also happy because now you get to explore those things. I mean, what are some of those things for both of you?
Well, I know for Teague, and he's already started on it, we met in film school, if you can believe that.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We went to film school together, and both kind of ended up taking very different routes because I think it's that pressure again of like, we're artists, but there's no money in art. So we took these sort of different routes, and Teague's a very talented writer. I know from film school.
And that's part of what I want to get back to reading and writing. It's one of the reasons I'm so excited to go to see all the great stuff and visit all these places and really be challenged and stressed by being in new environments. But a big part of what excites me about going is getting to read again. I haven't been able to read for pleasure in almost 4 years. And that's been also a very tough transition. And so I'm very excited to get to read again and to get to write again, because that's part of that part of me that got killed by law school. When you spend all day reading, you can't go home and read for pleasure. It just trains your brain to read in a lawyerly way, which is not how you should read novels. So that's one of the things I'm really excited to do.
It's like a simple thing like that, like get the opportunity to get to like sit down and read a book.
Yeah. Where today I have to catch a train in 8 hours. And in the meantime, I'm going to exercise and I'm going to read. I'm going to write a little bit.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting into, we're both super physical. And both, I mean, before the transition sort of started, we both are at the gym 6 days a week. And so now we're both kind of trying to figure out how to keep physical while also not having a gym. And so I'm excited to kind of figure that out and maybe get into yoga. I started doing handstands and inversions and gymnastics, and I'm looking forward to having the time to kind of play with that and learn movement all over again. And that sounds really lame unless you're a personal trainer, but
no, but it's an important thing. I mean, especially, so you guys, sounds like your plan is you're kind of mindset wise, you've set aside like a year basically. Mm-hmm. And you have money saved up for a year, I'm guessing, of travel.
We budgeted for a year, and maybe we'll not make it the full year. Maybe we'll make it longer. But we have a budget per month, and based on that budget holding true, we have about a year. Yeah.
What is the budget that you guys have per month?
We have, if we lived especially in Southeast Asia, really generously, we have $1,000 a month per person. And so we managed to save that. And people always trip out when I tell them this, but we saved that in a year. I mean, we didn't have that savings until the day we decided we wanted to go do this. So for people who think they can't afford to travel, you can. You definitely can, because we started putting money in the bank that day that month that we decided. And just in a year, we managed to save, almost, $25,000.
Yeah.
Between more than that, really, because we also have a nest egg for when we come back. But so we have a year budgeted.
Also, I mean, of course, you're not going to be paying for accommodations back at home. And I mean, you're cutting all these costs. Like if you said you were commuting a half hour to work every day, I mean, you could take your gas money that goes right into the travel fund. I mean, all these, I call them substitution costs, but they're essentially costs that you would be incurring at home that you just take on the road with you. There's no difference. You got to eat at home or you got to eat on the road. And oftentimes, I would probably choose the 50-cent plate of pad thai in Thailand,
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yes, we're so excited.
Very, very excited for that. That's another thing, we're ready for the food.
We're so ready for the food.
So ready for the food.
Yeah.
How are you going to travel? Are you going to just travel for travel's sake? I mean, you mentioned reading, exploring some of these things. Are you guys planning to try to pick up some work at some point? Or is it just going to be literally just to experience the world?
So our plan, and again, this kind of brings it back to that book, Vagabonding, is to travel as light and lean as possible. So we're each taking, don't laugh at us if this is like totally ridiculous, but we're each taking 28-liter backpacks for the year and one pair of shoes. And so that's sort of a ground rule, is that we don't want to crew any more stuff. And that I think we do want to work away. I've listened to your podcast on all that and all the resources that there are to sort of do work exchange programs. I think we're workaholics. So I think we're going to want to have exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like a really good way to integrate into the community. And, so those are sort of doing some work, but as to how we're going to travel, tight budget, trying not to live like we do at home where, on the weekends here we go and we drink beer and we try to escape our lives. We're hoping that on the road, we won't need to escape our lives. On the road, we'll get to, we'll want to be sober for every minute. We'll want to be, rested and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed every day.
The getting rid of your stuff, the whole getting rid of your stuff process. How's that been for you guys?
It's been stressful in that I'm worried I'm not going to get it done in time, but it's been really cathartic to actually get rid of the stuff.
I highly recommend to anybody, get rid of your stuff.
It's just take it out, take it to go donate it to Goodwill or whatever.
Even if you're not traveling.
It just feels so good. And like, I'm kind of a pack rat. I have the last big thing I have to get rid of is about 3 or 4 full sets of darkroom equipment. I was a photographer in college, and I kept everything, and people kept giving it to me, and I had a whole giant closet full of old enlargers and chemicals and just everything. And I'm so excited to leave that behind, because that stuff weighs on you when you have stuff and when you don't have time to do it.
Never use it.
I used it since I moved to Albuquerque 5 years ago. I think I've used it 3 times, and I've carried it around everywhere I've gone, and I feel guilty for not using it. So getting rid of stuff has just been a delight. The actual process is kind of rough. Like, I've been getting scammed on eBay and stuff. Yeah. People trying to get me to ship them electronics without paying for it. Yeah. It's stressful. The nuts and bolts are rough, but the actual act of doing it, you realize how little you need.
I have taken out, I kid you not, trash bags of clothes, Jason.
Yeah.
Just like bags upon bags of things that I've never worn, that I've carried from place to place. That I'm like, where is this pink shirt that I've never taken the tags off of? Why do I have that? So it's been kind of eye-opening too about the type of person that you are. Like, we know now at the end of this transition that I have a shopping problem.
I knew that before, but now you know it.
Now
too.
I know it. Also.
And that makes all the difference.
Yeah, knowing this happens, and really kind of examining, like, well, why do I keep buying things? Like, what is it that I'm trying to get out of purchasing more things that then I bring home and I never touch or look at or wear, and then I get rid of them and they don't mean anything to me? What is So that's been an interesting part of the transition too, to
even
kind of
if
evaluate.
even if something were to go wrong and like for some terrible reason we couldn't go, still just the act of downsizing to the level we've done it has been really good for us. And I would really fight hard to keep it that way. It's so easy to accumulate stuff. It's just so easy to do, and you don't notice it. And it's bit by bit until you have truckloads of darkroom equipment that you haven't touched in years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like once you go through it, when you do a big purge or you just get rid of a bunch of stuff, you do get that good feeling, you know, especially if it's associated with going to travel. And I think that good feeling stays with you. So if you go through this transition one time, you know, it feels good to get rid of your stuff. So then in the future, it's like that becomes something that you associate with feeling good. And I found that to be the case in my life as well, like to the point where like I feel really bad when I buy things. I'm like, I'm really critical about like what I bring in to my apartment now, because I'm living overseas now, and it's like I have to get stuff, and I find myself like but I don't want to get stuff. But I'm like, but wait a minute, I'm not traveling right now. Like we do need some of these things. I'm like, that's such a conundrum. During a transition to like a new lifestyle of travel, you just have to let go of so much.
Yeah.
Like your career, which might be like your identity, actual physical things. There's like mental things you have to let go of. You have to adapt to like a whole new life together. Like you guys as a couple, like your whole dynamic changes now,
Definitely.
Right? Well, how do you feel about that?
I'm really glad that we're going together, because I think that, and I don't know, solo traveling also sounds amazing, but I feel grateful because I feel like I'm like the free spirit who's like, let's go do this thing, which is great because it gets Teague to kind of break out of his routine.
I'm the grumpy old man.
But
She's the free spirit. I'm the grump, and together we sort of hit a good middle road that keeps us both safe and
But
fun.
Teague is so amazing in that anytime we leave the house, just even to like go to the grocery store, Jason, he'll be like, okay, phone, wallet, keys. Do you have your wallet? Do you have your ID? Like we'll just be going down the street to the bar and he'll be like, okay, do you have your wallet?
Those are
Do you have
important
your phone?
things.
They're important things. you know?
He's great because
I never lose anything.
we have gone to the bar multiple times and I don't have my wallet.
Yep.
I can't get in because I left it at home because I didn't phone, wallet, keys it.
There you go.
So
You got your own personal reminder. Alarm clock
I'm very
there.
excited for that. I think that's
and I
going to be
think,
really positive.
I mean, our dynamic, I'm sure, will shift. I mean, obviously, we're gonna be in bizarre environments and dealing with each other. Like when we have like terrible digestive issues, will probably be kind of fun to go through. I mean, we've sort of done that with training wheels a bit. We've been living together for how long? 2 years.
And we moved in sort of getting ready to travel in this transition. We moved from, we had like a basement apartment, which was huge, into a room,
closet.
into a closet
We live
because
in a
it's
closet.
cheap and we're saving money, that shares a wall with the bathroom that 5 other people use.
Right. Again, you're downsizing everything, including your living quarters.
And that was one of those things we were kind of worried. Like it doesn't just share a wall. There's literally a door. We live in a very old house that's been like redone many times, and so there's a door that if you're sitting on the toilet, you're looking right at the door that goes right into our bedroom.
Because it's not actually a bedroom.
Yeah, because it's like a closet.
It's like a Harry Potter closet.
And we thought that would be tough, but it actually hasn't been that bad. And I think that bodes well that we can kind of live in uncomfortable
very comfortable
spaces.
with everybody.
And that'll be nothing compared to who knows what we'll experience on the road. But I think we have like the groundwork laid to deal with those kinds of things as they come up, and it won't be super shocking. So I think our dynamic will shift.
It's because of the transition. It's because we've been very conscious about, I imagine if we had just gone from like, okay, well, we'll deal with travel when it gets here, boom, we'd be shell shocked. But I think because we've spent the last year and some months, the whole thing's been a transition, and we spent that time preparing slowly. And I highly recommend that to anybody who wants to travel. Like, take that time for yourself to work through the process and do what you have to do to get to a good place.
How do you guys feel about the time frame that it took you for this transition? Because it looks like it's about a year and 3 months since you made the decision. Obviously, for everybody, it's going to be different depending on your financial situation and circumstances and how quickly you can save. Do you feel that that was the right amount of time for you?
I think it actually worked out perfectly because at the time that we decided to go, and probably people who are thinking about it can relate, like I was just so unhappy with that. Like for me, if I could have gone that next month, I would have. And I'm glad I didn't because I needed that time.
Yeah.
And I think if it were Teague, he would have maybe stayed longer. And so we sort of split the difference.
Yeah.
And the year has, I think, been perfect. And I guess, of course, yeah, it depends on how fast people can save, but it's been the right amount of time where we've been able to stay excited about it, but also be productive.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff has just taken us time because, I mean, everyone's busy and we're no exception, that we have a lot of other things that take up your time. So it takes a long time to get some of this travel related stuff done. I mean, if we had a closer deadline, we probably would have met it. But it feels like about the right time.
It feels like it's time
and
to
it's
go.
hard to say how much of that is like when you set a time and then you have that finish line you're going to cross. You're going to cross the finish line right as you're you're going to barely like fall across it. Like, oh, we made it. Whether that so, but yeah, I feel like it's about the right amount of time for us.
Yeah.
How has it been so far slowing down and getting out of that mindset of like, oh, I need to be doing something. I need to be productive right now. Are you finding it hard, or is it starting to level out a little bit?
It's been really tough.
That's been the part that this last month has just been really, really difficult, harder than we thought, because we have to, part of it is we still have like a ton of stuff to do. So it's hard to get out of the mindset when you've got like hard deadlines. Yeah.
Tim Ferriss has this really great quote that says, being busy can be a form of laziness. And I think that really applies to us because when you're busy, you're not thinking. You don't have to think much. You just go. And so now that we're slowing down, we really have to sort of put some thought into what our day will be.
Yeah.
And how to, what's the best way to spend the time. And that's been tough.
That has been tough. I think that's going to be a difficult, because we haven't had to fully do it yet because we still I have a long list of things that have to happen. So I get to indulge my workaholism a little bit more. I just get to stress out about stuff and get it done. But I think that will be really tough. And I don't know if it'll hit before we leave or not.
Do you still feel like there's some lingering stress from the jobs and...
I'm still employed when I'm not supposed to be. So yeah, the job has really gotten its claws into me. I think that it's going to take a second, and I didn't anticipate that. I guess when you think about, you get the opportunity to quit your job, you think you quit it and you wash your hands of it and you walk out and you're a changed person. And that really has not been the case, though I suspect that's probably kind of normal.
Yeah, I can say I'm only on day 6 of being unemployed, so I don't have a ton of reference, but it definitely does take time. And I can tell how I feel today compared to last Tuesday was just, I feel much more like a regular human being, and I'm able to sort of distance from that work stuff a bit more. But that's going to take a while for me, I think. Yeah. It's going to take a while to see people as...
Is that normal, Jason?
Again.
Is that what do you see that a lot?
What do you mean, the stress part, or?
Yeah, the inability to sort of, or the struggle with letting go.
Yes, I think so. I mean... If you look at it psychologically, I would say it's you're in all these habits and work routines, and then all of a sudden, all that just drops off, and you're like, okay, how do I be in this space now? Kind of,
Yeah.
Teague, it sounds like you had a big, that big moment 2 days into it where you were like, oh my God, what's going on here? And you got past it because it's, what else are you going to do? You keep living, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You go get your job back, I guess.
But it's it's not, having the time now is not the worst problem in the world. I mean, we can file this under hashtag first world problems, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that is still there, and I was just curious how you guys are dealing with that.
Yeah. I'm excited to see when we check back in, 3 or 4 or 5 months to see where we've gotten to.
Yeah.
Because it's so uncertain, and I really have even more of an appreciation for people who've done this before us, including you, Jason, who have made the leap. It's a bet you place on yourself. You're betting that you're going to be okay, and you don't know for sure, but you're betting that you're going to be able to navigate and make it. And
you guys will be great.
Oh yeah.
We'll hear it in the next segment. 3 or 4 months later, whenever we record this.
Yeah.
Where are you guys going?
So we are flying into Bangkok, Thailand. We have about 2 weeks planned in the city, and by which I mean we have lodging. And from there, we made a very specific effort to not book anything beyond that, because we don't. Part of doing this is that we want to get out of the preset, the routine and this is the plan. We want to go, we want to listen, we want to talk to people, we want to, figure out what we actually want to do, and then leave Bangkok from there and go wherever it is we feel like we need to go.
You're headed to Southeast Asia and just hanging out in that region for as long as
until it
as
gets
you
too
do.
hot. Yeah, and then I think we'll probably go to India, and then I have it on my bucket list that I really want to go to Sofia, Bulgaria.
Mhm.
So we'll probably go hit up
Yeah.
Eastern Europe. I'm going to point to every sign that says
There's
Sofia.
going to be so many pictures of her
Oh my
pointing at
gosh.
signs
It's
for
gonna
the
be
entire.
Well, maybe we'll run into you guys somewhere, because I want to do some more traveling in Eastern Europe pretty soon, actually. What are you most looking forward to?
I think I'm looking forward to, and this is something that I didn't realize I was looking forward to until we started the transition, is I'm looking forward to not owning anything. Like I said, my backpack is 28 liters. I have a very specific wardrobe that I've put together in this time that I've done a lot of research on. I own that, some travel gear, and that's it. That's all I have to worry about. Everything I own in the world, I can fit in my backpack and carry on my back. And gosh, that sounds awesome.
I'm really looking forward to the sense of freedom that I think it's going to give us, that we have chosen to travel in that way, where we don't want to plan things out too far in advance, where we can sort of say, like, do you want to stay here for another week?
Yeah. Because
we're planning on going in like a slow pace. Like, we're not trying to see the whole world in one swoop. We want to go nice and slow. And I want to have that freedom that if suddenly we're like, I ran into a guy and he said that, like, Nepal is great this time of year, we should go to Nepal. You're like, why not? Let's go to Nepal. Like, that kind of freedom
nice.
to go out and see the rest of the world and be able to put ourselves in more of a global context. I mean,
Traveling
we
on
haven't
your own
traveled
terms.
across, off the continent ever, and we haven't had a lot of experience with vastly different other cultures. So I'm excited to have the freedom to sort of go get a wider cultural context that we live in and sort of appreciate how other people live.
Are you nervous?
oh my gosh, yeah. Are you not nervous? Is it just me?
I'm nervous in the sense that, like, we got a lot of stuff to take care of, and I know, like, there's going to be uncomfortable, painful things, but I'm also pretty confident in our ability to cope with that and figure it out as we go. So I wouldn't really say I'm nervous.
It's sort of the nervousness right before,
An exciting nervousness.
Yeah, before you jump.
Yeah.
Or before you're going up the roller coaster and you get to the top and you're like, oh my gosh, but you're nervous because it's going to be crazy, but you're excited because it's going to be really fun.
And friends and family, are they on board with this, or?
They are.
Yeah,
I mean,
cool.
we've been really, really lucky. I told my mom, she was the first person to know, and then we slowly told Teague's family, in that, like, hey, we're thinking about taking a trip at some point to somewhere for like a little bit. And
Are
then,
they
like,
more
hey,
conservative, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
it worked
Where are
out
you
that
from,
was
Teague?
Las Cruces, New Mexico, about 3 hours south of Albuquerque on the border.
His brother just had a baby, though, so we're
Oh, we're
like,
just riding
we're
that
like,
wave.
we just snuck in behind the baby, and we're like, we're leaving for a year.
Yeah. So they're really supportive. I think my parents are much more nervous than Sophia's mom is, but they were really supportive.
Yeah, they've been
I got to
awesome.
really hand it to my parents, because I did pick, like, a very conservative and traditional career path, and I'm sort of, just around the first bend, like jumping the track and doing something completely different.
We didn't know how they would react.
Yeah, we weren't really sure, but we did do, like, the kind of slow, like,
That's
thing,
what
and
I would
think that
recommend to
helped,
anybody.
so we didn't, like, shock them. I'd
Yeah.
hate for my mom to have a heart attack or something.
Caroline's been fantastic. She
Yeah.
bought us how to travel Southeast Asia on a shoestring, and oh my gosh, and it just, like, made me cry, because it was sort of the moment where you could just see it in her face that she was like, yeah, go do this thing. Like, this is amazing. And here's my blessing. And that always stands out to me.
And in terms of friends, everyone's been really supportive. I got a lot of support from my work friends, which I was kind of worried about. But every like grizzled old attorney that's been doing this for like 40 years, when they found out what I was doing, every single one is like, good, go do that. Do it now. Get out. Like every single one. And so I was like, clearly
you're making the right decision.
Yeah.
You don't need it validated, but it is nice when it gets validated, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I love how Sophia says you're riding the brothers baby wave. That's how it goes. Yeah. Well, congratulations to both of you. Sophia, I really appreciate you taking the time to reach out in the first place. Teague, it's great to meet you as well. And I'm really excited for you guys because you're going off on this thing. And I love that, you haven't waited till like you are that 40-year-old grizzly attorney or that, 40-year-old grizzly personal trainer that's getting bitter and you're like, oh man, like, well, we could have done this. No, we didn't, whatever. Like, I mean, and if you're listening to this and you are, later on and at that point or whatever, that's okay. Like there's never a time where you can't do it. I think that's the message behind, these types of transitions is just, taking the steps to do it, saving up the money, taking the steps you need, and getting rid of your stuff and all the laundry list of things to do. And eventually over time you get there and then all of a sudden you're 6 days before your trip, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. If I could say one thing to like me a year and 3 months ago and to like anybody who's listening to this, I think it's super important. You're going to feel fear, like you're going to feel afraid. Do it anyway. Just do it. Just recognize that it's normal and there will be parts of it that are stressful and that's okay because that's life. Do it anyway.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great thing to end on, I think. And we look forward to hearing from your future selves.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, I wonder where we'll be. If you're listening, then it's going to be like in 30 seconds.
Teague will have dreadlocks. He'll be like former lawyer turned like, super vagabond.
I'm so excited for this. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time. And like you said in the email, Sophia, there's so much value in it. The stages, what did you say? The stages of travel preparation, the transition can be just as valuable and daunting as the travel itself. And I guess we'll have to ask your future selves to find out if that's totally true.
Yeah, I wrote that. Now it's obvious. I had no idea what I was talking about.
No, but I think it is. I mean, it is part of the journey. It's like the journey before the journey is so huge. So congrats to you guys for doing it. You're getting out there, and looking forward to chatting with you in. I don't know when we're going to talk, 3 or 4 months from now, when you guys are really dug in, after the sort of the vacation wave is over and maybe you've mellowed into the trip a little bit. And then when you have good Wi-Fi, of course, because who knows where you're going to be.
Well, you have my contact information, so.
Sounds good. And we'll look forward to chatting with you guys soon. And thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Talk to you later.
Cheers.
Bye.
There you go. You just heard the lead up to this trip. Now, let's jump in the time machine over a year later after they've been around the world and hear what they're up to, where they're at, where they've been, how it turned out for them, what they thought about the long-term travel lifestyle, what they learned along the way. They're going to share their top lessons with you and so much more. We're going to get into part 2, recorded over a year later, right now. Please enjoy. Here we are, mere seconds later, but a lot of time has passed. We've gone through some kind of time warp here, and I have on the line 1 year and almost 4 months later, Sophia and Teague. How you guys doing?
Hi.
Hello. We're doing good.
Whoa, this is trippy.
Yeah.
No, this is crazy. I've been wanting to do this.
Sound older and wiser.
Well, it's been over a year and 4 months. Like, we recorded last October 4th, 2016. And now it is, February 2018. So 1 year, almost 4 months. Does it seem like that much time has passed? Like,
it seems like many lifetimes have passed in that time. We were emailing about this earlier, that I think the last time that we interviewed, Teague was getting ready to quit his job, or you had just quit your job?
Well, let's see. If it was October 4th, I think I had given notice, but because my last day was the 12th or the 15th or something like that. So I was at the very end of my job.
And he actually is starting work tomorrow.
Whoa.
So we've come full circle.
Yeah.
You guys
in a
are
very
back.
short amount of time.
You're
Yeah.
back home. Okay. All right. So, yeah, because when we spoke, Teague, you were 2 weeks into your unemployment. We called it fun employment because you were
okay.
ramping up.
Unemployed.
And you guys
Yeah.
were 6 days away from leaving on your journey. And actually, the last thing you said at the end of the last interview, Teague, was, I wonder where we'll be. And now you guys are back, but you've had a lot of
We're back.
adventures between that time.
It
so,
turns out that you can come home again.
well, we're going to get into the coming home thing because I have a lot of questions about that. But where have you guys been the last year plus?
Oh, man. Okay, we'll do the Spark Notes version first, and then we can slow it down. We did a year almost exactly on the road, leaving to Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, India, Nepal.
For a month each.
For a month each, we did those countries. And then we decided to, not because we were mad at each other, but because we just wanted to split up for a little bit, and we both kind of wanted to go different places, do different things. For 6 weeks, we split up, and Teague motorcycled Vietnam end to end and went and trained Muay Thai in Thailand. I left and went to go to London, Belgium, Portugal, and Spain because that sounded more fun to me. And then we re-met again in Paris, France, and then we
How romantic.
hitchhiked. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we got engaged in Paris.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa! Oh, man, I'm getting the chills now. The things that can happen on these trips. Okay. So, all right, keep giving us the overview, then we'll go backwards.
There's so many stories. And then we went and we worked construction in Italy and went to Greece. And then we went and lived in Bulgaria for a month. And from there we went back to London, Ireland, Scotland, back to Portugal, back to France. And then we traveled America for a month.
Well, in there we also did the Czech Republic,
Oh, yeah.
Hungary, and Germany
So
with my
many.
little sister.
It was a really long
my little
year.
sister met up with us for a few weeks, and we sort of zoomed through Europe somewhere in there before we went and lived in Bulgaria for a month and a half.
We went everywhere, Jason.
We went everywhere.
Did you say you hitchhiked from Paris to Italy? Or
We hitchhiked in Italy. We hitchhiked
okay.
around Italy. We flew into Venice because you can get really good flights from Paris to Venice if you're willing to fly at 4 a.m., which we were. But we ended up, while we were there, having some transportation issues. We had to get to a different city on a Sunday when the buses didn't run. And the woman that we were staying with said, "Oh, you're Americans. They'll get a kick out of it. Just take a sign, go stand by the road, and somebody will pick you up." And we did that. And sure enough, we did. We made it all the way to the coast.
The police came and talked to us first, and at first we thought they were going to really give us a hard time, but they seemed to get a kick out of it as well, even though what we were doing, I think, was illegal.
Yeah, it was legal.
But they seemed to enjoy sort of intimidating us a little bit. And then yeah, some really nice people picked us up, and we made it all the way down the mountain.
All the way to the coast.
Yeah.
Hitchhiking in Italy. So.
you guys had a somewhat open plan. I know you had sort of your beginning plans, and then it was a bit open. I remember during the last interview, Teague, you said kind of offhand, like, "Hey, if we run into a guy and he says, 'Hey, Nepal's a great time of the year,' then we can go." And we look forward to having that sense of freedom. Well, you guys went to Nepal. I don't know if that's because you ran into a guy there or whatever, or said to go. But how did this trip evolve? Was it totally organically? Like, how did you guys end up going the places you went? And we can get into highlights and stuff later because I have a lot of travel questions too. But I really want to hear about your, a little bit more about your time on the road. But yeah, how did this trip unfold for you?
Okay, so our process was pretty fluid. We had, and all the credit to the planning does go to Sophia. She was the master of searching for flights and staying on top of all that. But we had a really rough plan intentionally of spending about 6 months in Asia and then 6 months in Europe. We often sort of decided on a whim where to go. For example, we knew we bought our big ticket from LA to Bangkok months and months in advance to leave. We got that really cheap. And then we did a month in Thailand, and that was pretty free form.
Mhm.
We just sort of did what
Went
we met
wherever.
people.
Yeah.
They recommended going places. We looked stuff up. And then I don't even remember how we picked Cambodia next.
Well, we were just we were still kind of enjoying Southeast Asia, and we decided, bus tickets to Cambodia were $20 or the equivalent of $20, and so we thought, okay, well, we'll go to Cambodia. And while we were there, we heard the islands were really great. We ended up on an island. We
worked on an island for a couple weeks.
And from there, like to Malaysia, it just happened I got online and looked for a cheap plane ticket and saw that plane tickets to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia were $25. So I turned to Teague and said, do you want to go to Malaysia? And neither of us knew anything about it. We had never been there. We had never thought we would go there. And
yeah,
5 minutes later, we
bought the tickets. We did like 3 or 4 minutes worth of Googling to make sure, like, okay, we can get the visas. That's easy. Let's go there. And then, we just bought tickets. So we did
a lot of like that.
It was very free form.
It was a lot of like, well, our visas are ending. Kind of like almost like throwing a dart at a board and like, oh, Malaysia will be good.
Just keeping it open.
Yeah, just keeping it open. And
once we got into Europe, it was a little more structured just because it's more expensive. So we had to plan ahead. Like, for example, we scheduled pretty far in advance our month in Scotland, where we worked on a farm in the north of Scotland for a month. And that had to be set up fairly far in advance.
But sort of the joy of Southeast Asia is that, it's all really accessible. It's not scary. It's very, very like, traveler friendly. There's a whole highway, a metaphorical highway, and maybe literally a highway, set up to make it so that you can travel around and go to these different places. And really, really easy to kind of decide on the fly where you wanted to go. So it
was easier than you thought it was going to be going into it?
Oh, so much easier.
So much easier than, people would say like, oh, you're so brave for going to Southeast Asia. And now that we've been, I can tell you, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I know people say that, but it was just unbelievably accessible.
That's the thing I tell whenever it comes up and people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that for a year. My thing is like, the thing I always tell them is that it's so much easier than you think. Like, the hardest part is being like brave enough to actually pull the trigger,
by far.
But the actual planning of it and, you can do it. If you can use the internet and you can Google a little bit and plan just slightly ahead, because we made a
lot of mistakes.
We made a lot of mistakes. We made a lot of really impromptu decisions. Like going to Malaysia, we were just drinking margaritas on a beach after having lived on this island without power for 2 weeks. And we're just kind of living it up and thinking, oh, what should we do next? And it really was just like, oh yeah, Malaysia. I've heard of that country.
I was like, oh, my old roommate went to Malaysia once. I think she really liked it. That's all I really know. Let's buy these tickets.
And it was one of our best experiences. We worked in a hostel for the better part of a month. We made some really good friends, ate some of the best food in the world.
Yeah.
And just we met Jackie Chan in Malaysia.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we tried to go to a movie and it turns out the movie was canceled and Jackie Chan was there.
Yeah, we tried to go see La La Land because Malaysia is so fascinating because Kuala Lumpur is this giant metropolis, but also this like very old country. So we're living in Chinatown where, they're chopping up frogs in the alleys for the soup. And, it's really this kind of like old world feel. And then you walk 10 minutes to a 8-story mega mall called the Rise of Opulence that has like a 3-story Chanel store. It's really like bizarre differences.
A crazy name for a mall.
Yeah,
the Rise of Opulence.
Do you want to go see a movie of the Rise of Opulence?
And so we tried to go see La La Land, and we get there, and every showing of every movie is canceled, and they're all just showing Jackie Chan's new movie, which is called Kung Fu Yoga. And some guy walks up to us and says, I have these tickets. My friends aren't coming. Do you want them? And we're like, I guess we'll see this kind of crazy looking movie. The poster is like Jackie Chan flying through the air in a Jeep with like a lion in the back seat.
Yeah. I love Jackie Chan movies.
Yeah.
And it's really great because it's clearly not a movie meant for Western audiences. And so like the conventions within the film are so different that it was really a bizarre experience. But he came into the whole cast came into the theater beforehand.
Into the theater. We're like,
shakes
Our whole-
hands,
yeah.
chats, gives like a speech. It was, and the people just went nuts. Like
What
the
a
whole
strange
theater is like
day.
screaming. And we're like, man, we're just gonna go see
Did you
Law.
ever think that you would be in a movie theater in Malaysia shaking hands with Jackie Chan?
Right. I
What a
mean, this is like one day
strange
you
day.
wake up wherever, and like
Yep.
by the end of the day, you've met Jackie Chan, and like
Right, yeah.
you never know what's
Yeah.
going to happen when you're
You
out
never
on the
know what's
road.
going to happen.
Yeah. And all of that
wonderful.
stemmed from just a kind of random choice because tickets were cheap. And we had like,
The
you
day
know,
off.
half of a recommendation that it was a neat place to go.
Yeah.
So I think the opportunity is everywhere.
It sounds like you guys kind of did a combination of like planning your trip around places you wanted to go, of course, but then like the Malaysia thing was just like, hey, kind of on a whim, or our visa's running out, we got to figure out where to go next. Let's just go here. Maybe you were traveling, sounds like, to some places for the work opportunities that dictated some things, and meeting up with family and all these different things, which I think, you know, makes a lot of sense when you're out on the road for a year. How was the transition to living on the road? Because you guys went from, you know, sort of this quote unquote regular kind of life, you know, Western, you know, job and living in one place and all that stuff to living on the road. Can you give us the arc of how you felt during your time on the road from like the beginning to settling in, and how did that all go for you?
Yeah, I think we have sort of slightly different experiences. Teak did really well. I kind of struggled with it, to be perfectly honest. When you first get on the road, you're used to like being home with your clothes and your hair products and your showers and
Your warm showers.
your warm your toilets that have seats, and it was really probably the first month took me quite a minute to kind of get used to like, okay, you have 4 shirts, you have 2 skirts, you have 5 pairs of underwear. This is your life now. We lived on an island for a while, and the only showers you had were dumping cold buckets of water over your head, and geckos were pooping in the water, and there are scorpions crawling around on the floor. And it was a weird adjustment to kind of let go of vanity. I think really for me was the struggle that, you know, your hair's kind of crazy this week because you live on an island, and the trade-off is that you don't get your sort of creature comforts of pretty clothes and nice shoes, and I think it's a really cathartic experience that was super valuable, and it's been really valuable for me coming home. And I would say it took me about 4 weeks to adjust, and then you kind of get to a point where it's your life now. You know, it's normal. There were growing pains for me for sure, though.
Yeah, I feel like I adapted to that part of it just fine.
That was like your dream.
Yeah, it kind of is. I like the idea of I just wear the same T-shirt. Like I have like 3 identical shirts that I wear, and that's it. That part wasn't difficult. I think so. That transition was fairly smooth for me. I know that after a while living out of the pack, like the low level stress that it is does kind of add up. Like the idea that everything I own and everything that's super important, I have to keep track of all the time, and not having like a safe spot that's your home. Like we didn't have anything
That's true towards the
valuable.
end,
We just
yeah.
had, I guess, like passports, and we had a little cheap like Chromebook.
Yeah.
And so we didn't own anything valuable, but if any of that stuff had like disappeared, it would have been really stressful.
Passports, yeah.
And so having to carry that on your back all the time after months and months
After
did
a
kind of
year,
wear on you. And that was what made doing things like working in a place really nice, where you are kind of like living on the farm in
Yeah.
Scotland.
You
But
got
you know,
your
it's
own
very
room.
safe. You had your own room. And so about halfway through, I was kind of tired of living out of the pack in the sense that I had to always
Like being
keep
on the
an eye
go.
on everything.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's,
And so then when we started switching and doing some of the longer term working, it was kind of like little islands where in between the islands of working, we're doing all the like cool, crazy backpacking, and you're moving quickly and you're staying in all these random places and you're meeting a lot of people, and you do that for a month, and then you get to like stay on the farm for a while.
you make friends, and you can unpack your clothes.
Yeah.
And
And
wash
so-
your socks.
And so we started to move into like that rhythm where we're like, let's move and then we'll stop. Let's move and then we'll stop. And that was, I think, really nice because the constant moving was too much. And if we stayed in a place too long, that was also too much for a year. So after a while, we kind of settled into that rhythm, which I didn't expect at all. I thought we were just going to like...
We slowed down significantly, basically, over the course of a year. And but I think it was a really positive experience in teaching you, you really don't need that much to live and to be happy and to have good experiences. It's sort of all window dressing at the end of the day to, what you're really there to do, which is experience new things and meet new people. And no one cares what you're wearing. I mean, only you. And,
I will say, though, we were both so glad to get rid of our like walking sandals when we got home.
We did the one pair of shoes
the whole time, and they were perfect. They were great, but amazing. I never want to put them on again.
What kind of sandals?
Chacos.
Oh yeah,
we both bought Chacos. By the end, mine split.
Yeah,
they're great. They really are. I recommend them. They're the ugliest shoe I think in the world, but they're so comfy and so durable, and they'll make it through. But man, mine are still just sitting on the porch. I haven't touched them since we got back.
Mine cracked in half a month before we came home, and we were just gluing it. So we'd like go to the dollar store, we'd glue the shoe together, and then
every good trip involves some glue or duct tape. Like if you're not gluing or duct taping something, then
did you even travel? Where did you leave?
What have you done? I'm saying this is a trip, but you just brought up the fact that it like changes from a trip to life, at a certain point. I mean, a trip is like 2 or 3 weeks, or I mean, you can't put a number on it, I guess, but when you're on the road for a year, you're living your life. You just happen to be traveling while you're living your life. So that's where it becomes a different experience, I think, because you're now getting past the vacation mode and you're getting into just, hey, this is my life. So really quick on the work opportunities, because it sounds like you guys have done a lot of cool things. Can you just, again, rattle off a few of the things you did, and where did you find all these opportunities, and what were some of the highlights there? Because I think people that might be attracted to like slow travel or the idea of exchanging, I don't know if you did it for accommodations in exchange, like a volunteering thing, or like talk to me about that experience.
Yeah, we got a profile with workaway.org, which I highly recommend. There's some tricks to using it. I think you have actually a previous podcast on it, Jason. You want to make sure you get a place with good reviews, and you never know what you're really going to get. But we volunteered on an island in Cambodia where we bartended and served breakfast. We
did construction.
And did construction.
I put that I was a handyman on the profile, so everywhere we went, I did a lot of construction.
Either do put that you were...
Where was that?
That was in Cambodia on Karang Sanlom. Yeah.
If you can do construction, put it on your profile, because everybody needs somebody to work construction. That being said, you will get put to work. And then we did a month in a hostel in Malaysia, where we were put up in an apartment in Chinatown, and we walked to work every morning, and I made breakfast and teak worked construction.
Yeah.
And we worked construction in Italy on a 400-year-old stone house, and we worked on a farm for a month in Scotland.
Yep.
Yeah. So we kind of tried to plan like the more expensive places like Scotland, where we knew that either we'd only be able to go for a weekend, or we'd have to, work away as a work exchange. So you get room and board, typically at least a meal, in exchange for 5 hours roughly of work a day, roughly 5 days a week, which was fine for us because we like to work. I mean, it doesn't really change, especially because you're not on vacation. You're living your life, like you said, and you need something to kind of fill your days and give you value. So I think Workaway was really great for that.
Yeah,
it
was
a sense of home, and
it definitely was where a lot of our good friendships came from, because so often on the road when you're meeting people, like they are on shorter trips, and so they're like, hey, let's party, like let's go out and do crazy stuff. And that's fun every now and then, but when it's your life, like you just can't do that every day. And they're just coming at it from such a different mindset that it's hard to, it's just hard to connect with someone when you're sort of crossing in the night.
Right. They want to go out, and we're like, well, we've been on the road for 6 months and we don't really want to party every night because, we're doing another 6 months. And so when you're working with people, they're kind of in the same mindset of you, and you sit up and have conversations. And
we made some really good friends in Malaysia and Scotland and Italy. It was a really good basis to to really get to know some people, to get to know the area really well, and kind of, settle in. Because if you spend like a crazy week in Bangkok, I feel like you probably don't know Bangkok really that well. But if you lived there for a month working, which we didn't do that in Bangkok, but like you're going to get a sense of knowing it. We did that in Kuala Lumpur, and I think it made it a really special experience.
Mm-hmm. By the way, the site I think is workway.info. Strangely enough.
Workway.info.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I like that tip, kind of using this strategy, if you want to call it that, inexpensive places. But I think saying it's a strategy kind of undermines like the value you can get out of this, or it sounds like that you guys have gotten out of this experience, because it wasn't just about the cost savings, although that's a part of it, but there's a lot around that. I mean, not only are you getting yourself more in the culture, but like Teague, I mean, you came from working as a lawyer to now you're just like doing construction for free. Like, I mean, you talked and Sophia, you talked about letting go of like, vanity or whatever in the beginning of the trip. Like, what are some of the other things you guys had to let go of as far as your identities? I don't know if that's the right question, because you are who you are, but did you feel like you were detaching from certain things?
Yeah, definitely. I know for me, like detaching from the like work lawyer mentality was a little difficult at first, but I think one of the healthiest things I got out of travel, because my job before, I don't remember how much I talked about it in our past thing, but it was a really stressful job that just absorbed 99% of my mental energy and completely dictated who I was. And that's kind of, I think, how lawyers tend to be, is they get really wrapped up in your profession and it really defines who you are as a person. And so being on the road, suddenly none of that mattered anymore. And it was kind of like a good chunk of myself that wasn't particularly healthy or good for me got lopped off. And I had to sort of exist in a world without that. Like no one cares what you do back home on the road. So suddenly like everything I used to talk about and be just doesn't matter anymore. And I had to sort of not become a whole person again, but, I had to kind of like parts of me that, was, having a good conversation that wasn't based on the crazy case I was working on, had to sort of, no one cares. And so,
which is great.
It was really good for me to kind of let that go and sort of, sounds so stupid to say find myself, but I guess that really is what it was, to sort of find who I was apart from that in a completely different context and then bring that home. And I think it's made me a much like more whole and centered and happy person.
What
but
did
that was
you find when you examined?
Well, I think I found that, I got too wrapped up in what I was doing and I was letting it make me super unhappy. And I had a lot of really bad habits associated with it that, I've since been able to kind of leave behind. And just be like a little more of a relaxed, calm-centered person who understands my much smaller space in the world than I used to believe it. I used to think I was more important than I was. And I wouldn't have said that at the time, but in looking back on it, I took myself too seriously. And travel, whether it's, having terrible food poisoning or, missing a bus or, getting made fun of by someone because you are doing the dumbest thing because you have no idea what's going on. Like it really humbles you, and that's really good. I think that's one of the better things I got out of it is being directly humbled like that.
I mean, by the way, all those things you mentioned on a year-long trip are guaranteed to happen to you if you go on a year-long trip.
Multiple times.
That is going. All of that of the above is going to happen. So
it's going to happen a lot. It's going to be like your most common experience.
You're going to feel the food poisoning come on and just think to yourself, well, here we go.
Yeah.
Get the bucket.
Yep. And it's just like you just sort of walk around, especially in Asia, with like a sort of, you're just moving so much. You just always have kind of like low grade food poisoning and you get really hardy about it. You're just like, yeah, I'm sick, whatever. We just keep going.
So we're still going to go to the beach, right?
Yeah.
It's character building.
It is. It's very character building.
You learn very, very quick to get comfortable with being sort of uncomfortable. Because the exchange is that you get to be in these amazing places and do these incredible things. So,
why else is travel good for you? And is there anything about it that was bad for you?
I'm trying to think if there's anything that's bad. I mean, I think that it was really perspective building in as Americans who had not really traveled a whole lot before, you are forced to sort of confront your own biases about places, about people, assumptions that you have, and realize that, like, one, you do have your own weird biases that you know, no matter how progressive and cool you think you are, you go to a place and you realize, like, oh, wow, I really don't know anything about this culture and I've never bothered to learn. And you sort of come to realize that, you know, everybody's just like you. They're people who love their families. They're trying to work jobs. They're trying to have a good time. And I think that's really, really valuable.
Yeah, I think it's perspective shifting in that way that you, or I had a more like
different, but it's not really that different.
Yeah, that people are, you know, like, yeah, the window dressing of different cultures is different, but like basic human values are so similar everywhere, and it's really uplifting.
Yeah.
And I tended towards being kind of like a skeptical, pessimistic person beforehand, and traveling and you know, receiving the kindness of strangers who don't have to help you.
Oh man.
Rolled over, like, and how much we depended on that. It really affirms like the basic decency of human beings. And that's really positive.
You're so vulnerable when you travel, and that's valuable, just to be vulnerable for a little bit. But
we'd still be stuck in India if it wasn't for the kindness of strangers. And that was so cool that, you know, people helped us out. And
we literally got stuck in India. We literally got stuck and could not get out, but for like these random people who would like be like, they couldn't really speak to us, but they'd be like, here, come here. And they'd take us to wherever it was we needed to go and point at the thing. And I mean, yeah, we would still be in Tiruchirappalli.
What was the second half of your question though? That was what's bad?
Yeah.
I think, and this is just us, we got really tired after a while of being sort of in transient relationships with everybody. There's something about, I don't know if it's just maybe our age or just being a human, that you, after a while, do miss having like long-term friends. And when you travel fast, you do kind of get jaded to, it's, you know, a new person every day, a new person. Hi, where you been? Where you from? What are you doing? That after a while, I think, got really old. And
yeah, you had to be careful
kind of
not to
closes you off
really closed off, because you had the same conversations over and over. And yeah, after
9 months of meeting hostile friends and having the same conversation about who you are, where you're from, where you been, where you're going next, you do kind of get burnt out. And that's not great. We would guard against that next time and just be more careful. But it's good to keep in mind when you're traveling fast, to take time to slow down, to have good relationships. And
okay, so you guys were together all the time as a couple, and then you decided to split up. And I'm really curious about this part of the trip, because now we get to see, okay, first of all, your experience together as a couple, and like the fact that you then wanted to have this solo travel experience. Why did you decide that?
I think we talked about it on our last interview, but it was sort of in a rough plan that we would split up at some point. That was important to, you know, if we were going to do this, like, let's really do this. And I think we sort of anticipated that there would be a point where we would maybe want to do separate things, and we both had sacrificed so much to be on this trip that it didn't seem right that either one should have to compromise. And sure enough, that moment came where basically I was ready to be out of Asia, and he was not. And I think you even said, like, I'm not ready to leave yet.
Yeah.
And so that was that exact moment that I think we had sort of been realistic about. I'm ready to go. I don't want to spend another month here. He really wants to stay. And it's not, you know, if he comes with me to Europe now, he's going to be maybe resentful or, you know, wish that he had stayed. So
was part of that like also wanting to have this solo travel experience?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Because when you travel as a couple, first off, like, you really get to know how you work as a couple when you travel together the way we did. Yeah. Like, let's see, like Thanksgiving. So we're in Thailand, in northern Thailand. We've been on the road for like, you know, just a couple weeks. and Sophia decides she really has to rent a scooter. And
everybody has a scooter, Jason. Everybody has a scooter.
And,
I
like,
want a scooter.
Oh,
she's
no.
never ridden anything before. But I'm like, all right, like it's a cool adventure. Let's do it. Like, it's beautiful. It's in Pai. There's like beautiful mountainous countryside. And so we get scooters, and her lesson is like 5 minutes in an alley with a 12-year-old Thai kid who just like, doesn't speak any English, sort of points and is like, all right, here you go. And like hands her the keys. And I remember thinking like, I don't know, man, this isn't good. And every third person in Pai is like a person in elephant pants with like a limb bandaged.
I didn't realize that.
And it's because they rent scooters and wreck them. And so that happened. Sophia wrecked a scooter, and then she got really terrible food poisoning.
All within the same day.
On Thanksgiving Day. And I literally had to like carry her back to the hostel and then make polite conversation with the two delightful Scottish girls we were sharing a room with while Sophia's in the bathroom, just like...
You get very comfortable. Like, I'm expelling liquids from every place.
The doors are thin, and you can hear everything, basically.
Yeah. And so, like, traveling as a couple, you get really intimately involved in each other's lives in a way that you did not anticipate before.
I love how politically correct you are about, like, the story. You're just really weaving your way through it, like, very, very lawyerly.
Not too many details, but definitely he had to hoist me up on his shoulders at some point and, like, jog through the streets. All the people thought it was really cute and they're waving. Meanwhile, I'm like
she's gonna throw up on the back of my neck. Like she's gonna poop on me.
We will not be including the audio from that into this podcast.
Right. No recreation.
But
please.
So that's part of it, is that you do get like super comfortable and involved in each other and very dependent. And so I think if you're not careful, you can just depend on each other so much that you don't have to like go outside of what becomes a fairly comfortable space. Because you can just rely on each other, and you don't have to rely on other people or get to know other people because you're traveling together. And so the decision to split up and travel separate for a while, I think, was really in part to counter that, to see like, can I really do this on my own? Like, what happens? Can I hack it if I'm in the middle of Vietnam and something goes wrong and I'm completely alone? Can I like figure out what to do on my own?
Have that experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think
who am I outside of traveling in this pair?
Yeah, and that's really important because you are confronted with a lot of stuff that you wouldn't have, had to deal with if you had your other person there.
Yeah.
Well, let me hear about it from each of you. How did you find the solo travel experience?
We had spent a month before in India, which is its own fun side adventure, and then we were in Nepal, and I was just ready to go somewhere with the toilet paper. Teague wanted to go motorcycle Vietnam, and I knew that was not something that I was particularly interested in doing. I had just,
especially after the motorbike incident.
Yeah, we had. Yeah, I was done. I was like, no more two wheels.
No more two-wheel transportation on this trip. Yeah.
Right. So, and I had always wanted to, as I think probably most people listening to, you always think like, someday I'm gonna backpack Europe. I'm gonna take my backpack and I'm just gonna fly to London and go and do it. So that was sort of my MO, was to go live out that dream, the backpacking Europe dream. And I flew to London and couch surfed, which is another great service that people can use. I couch surfed with a Polish house. Yeah, you kind of learn who you are when you're on your own, and nobody that I met on the road knew me in the context of Teague or in the context of our life before. They just knew that I was like some girl with a backpack traveling through Europe for 6 weeks. And it's really cool I highly recommend sort of solo backpack, because I think it kind of opens you up to people and kind of to who you are. Like, well, now that I'm not in a couple, like, what do I want to talk about?
Yeah.
What are the things that are important to just me? And you do miss your other half, but man, it was really great.
So you did London.
I did London. I did Brussels,
Amsterdam,
Portugal. I went up and down the coast of Portugal for 2 weeks and couch surfed, and
you got to do whatever you want. You didn't have to make any compromises.
Yeah, it was really, really great. And it's an interesting thing, because I was couch surfing a lot because I was like, I'm going to do Europe on $800 for 6 weeks, which was a terrible idea. But I depended a lot on couch surfers, and also because I was trying to meet people. Because it was just me, and I'm 5'2", and I'm a girl. I think people were very, very open to taking me into their home and showing me kindness. It was a lot harder to find couch surfing opportunities when Teague, who's 6'3", and a little bit more intimidating than I am, was with me. So I, got to kind of move freely and very fluidly. And I think someone offered to host me in this city tonight, so I think I'm going to catch a bus out of town and walk to this person's house. And when I say it like that, it sounds really dangerous, and don't tell my mom. But it was fantastic. Teague has better stories because he was in Vietnam.
I left first, flew out of Kathmandu to Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, and we'd set it up because we'd done a meditation retreat in Nepal. Was our last thing we did there. And so we set everything up before that, because then it was like 11 days of complete isolation and no internet and everything. So we had all the tickets and everything bought right before that. And I rented a motorcycle in Ho Chi Minh City and then spent a month slowly headed north on a motorcycle, ending in Hanoi, and had a lot of crazy adventures on the way. If you like motorcycling, Vietnam's a pretty great place.
I'd be sitting on the Douro River in Portugal having an espresso and an amazing pastry, and I'd get a picture of Teague on the back of a motorcycle, and in front of him are like sharks loaded onto a truck with like people weaving in and out. I would like look down at my pastry and just be like, I made the right choice.
Yeah, we definitely both made the right choice. You would have hated everything about it. And I loved it. It was really great because I did have to sort of do all that on my own. I had to negotiate dealing with, the police in Vietnam on my own, getting a motorcycle, meeting people on the road.
Yeah, you made a lot of friends.
I made a lot of friends in Vietnam because, you're all suffering through the same thing, and nothing bonds you quite like suffering. So, you would all be on the road together. And I met up with the same people 3 or 4 times while in Vietnam. You just happen to run into each other because it's a very narrow country. And if you're all headed north, there's only a couple different places to stay in certain spots. Yeah, I did that for a full month. I got really sick a few times and just had to ride that out by myself too, which was interesting to not have someone looking after me when I'm really sick.
Yeah. But it kind of builds care. I mean, it's very like,
yeah,
it's fine. I can take care of it. I
Yeah.
can take care of myself.
When did you decide to pop the question? Because you came together again in Paris? Was that?
Yeah. Well, so
how did it go down, man?
So
congratulations once again.
Thank
you.
Yeah, we're really excited.
I sort of knew it would happen at some point on the trip. And we had spent 6.
Thank God you were right.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that if we left the trip and you're like, I don't know if this girl's for me.
I mean, I guess in some ways,
a lot about what it sounds like when she's sick.
Traveling like that is the ultimate like relationship crucible.
Yeah, it
because
really
if we can spend 6 months together, 24/7, and we're sick and stressed out and dealing with all this stuff, and we still want to hang out together, I figured that was a good metric. And so that was kind of my thought, is like, I think this is going to happen. You really know someone after that. And so then the 6 weeks apart in my mind was sort of like, okay, we had this really intense time together. Now we have a couple weeks apart. I can get like a little distance on it and really think it through. And so that was my thought. And that's what I did a lot of time when I was like tootling up a hill in Vietnam for hours by myself.
Well, I totally have the vision of you on the motorbike. It's very romantic vision, right? Like on the motorcycle by yourself, like contemplating life, trying to decide if you're going to do this thing.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Was it like the first day you came together, or did like?
I had also done my own contemplating, Jason.
Yeah, where you could have said no,
I also got a ring to go to Paris.
Whoa.
Yeah, because I had a sort of a similar experience to Teague, which is like, we've had this really intense time together. I feel really grateful to have someone who, traveling alone a lot, especially as a woman, and I would tell people I have a boyfriend, and they'd go, "Oh, your boyfriend let you come here?" And I'd be like, One, my boyfriend doesn't let me do anything. Let me tell you that. Yeah. Two, yeah, that is pretty cool, right? He's like really cool with it. And, was so grateful for him when we were traveling together because I'm very high strung in the planner, and he would always be like, "It's fine, relax, like it's okay," and that's such a valuable partnership. And then being apart, I thought, yeah, I think I'm going to propose to Teague in Paris for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So we get to Paris. We had so much catching up to do because 6 weeks in travel time, as you know, as a traveler, is a lifetime.
I'm sorry, I just assumed the traditional,
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Well, so we both had rings. That's what
We both
the story.
had rings, yeah.
I bought a
Who
ring.
did it? Who made it, Jason?
I don't
Next
know.
time on Zero to Travel.
I don't know. I can't. I'm gonna guess that Teague beat you to the punch. I don't know, but I don't know. Sophia, maybe
I'm wily.
you're
so
wily. You're unpredictable.
know. It's
You know,
hard to know.
you don't know.
So here's what happened. I bought a ring in Thailand right before we went back together because it was sort of like, yep, I've had my time to think about it. Definitely doing this. Sophia had a ring. And then we met up in Paris and we had this awesome little Airbnb. And we were there for 3 days.
Paris is incredible.
Must have been so nice to see each other again, too.
So nice
after
to
6
see each
weeks.
other.
Yeah.
I mean, we're like meeting again for the first time on like a picnic blanket under the Eiffel Tower with like a bottle of wine.
Wow.
And some cheese. I mean,
And it didn't happen there?
No, it didn't. We had so much to talk about that it.
Yeah. Well, and when we first met up, Sophia was super stressed out because I was really confused by the public transit in Paris.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like an hour late. And we didn't have phones or anything. And so when I showed up, she was like,
he got kidnapped. This is it. I'm gonna have to call his parents. I'm like in a coffee shop crying, trying to get reception. And then like I look across the street and Teague's like
bopping along,
like playing, and I run out of the coffee shop with tears. And
So when we first meet up wasn't a good time. I'd had like a really weird flight I flew out of Bangkok and had a layover in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan, which is a crazy place, and was like, jet lagged and really confused about what time it was and being in such a different climate. So we had 3 days.
catching up.
3 days of catching up and just sort of enjoying Paris. And then on the third and final day, right before we fly out to Venice was next.
Flying to Venice.
We had a bottle of wine.
Yeah, we got a bottle of wine. We went to the steps of the Louvre.
It's like a beautiful spring night.
Our
no one
plan
there.
was to we both had kind of plans for that night. And it was to go watch the Eiffel Tower. They light it up on the hour. So we had midnight. We were going to go to the Eiffel Tower. But first we got this bottle of wine. We're sitting on the steps of the Louvre talking. We're getting kind of tipsy.
And we just kind of lost track of time. We didn't. And then suddenly we realized it was almost
it's like 15 minutes to midnight.
Yeah.
We gotta go.
And we have to get to the Eiffel Tower from there.
It's very far.
And we get a little confused on the subway, and we're sprinting through the subway stations in Paris trying to make it. And we eventually get to the right station, and we get out, and we can kind of see the Eiffel Tower in the distance, and we're
just like Mission Impossible style sprinting through the streets. Our plans messed up. We're laughing because we're like, how could we possibly? I'm like, how could we possibly be late I'm about to get engaged. I'm going to propose and I'm late. I'm the worst traveler of all time.
And so then it hits midnight and the thing sparkles and we're just in the middle of I think it's New York Avenue in Paris. Yeah. And there's no one out and there's no traffic or anything. And so we're standing in the middle of the street and we're laughing and we're sweaty and a little drunk. And I was just like, hey, will you marry me? In the middle of the street. And she's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you tell him that you had? Oh, you guys can kiss now. Go ahead.
I don't like him that much.
I felt the moment coming. That's awesome. What a great story. Wow. So
the tagline is we were a little drunk and late for our own engagement.
Yeah. There
so
you go.
Perfect.
Well, it's nice too. The solo travel really does give you time to reflect on whatever is going on in your life, and I find just having space, travel gives you a certain space from a lot of different things that it can be hard to get in your regular life if you're not making a conscious effort, because I feel like it's easier to get in sort of habit loops and different things in your regular life and routines, and all of a sudden you're not paying attention to the fact that well, 3 months just went by. You haven't given yourself any space to like explore
Exactly.
certain things
Yeah.
about yourself or whatever. So, you mentioned like finding yourself, and which is like a typical travel cliche, but I think for a reason. And I think it's not so much the travel, it's just like the travel sort of facilitates the space in a way. So what did you guys find?
Just to your point, and what I think is one of the most valuable things about travel is that you find on the road, you suddenly just have a lot of time, in your regular day-to-day life where you work, if you have relationships, and you never have you don't have as much time to sit down and just think. But suddenly when you're on the road and you have an 8-hour bus ride to Poland, you find that you have just an infinite amount of time to stare out the window and kind of think and confront things. And the road, I think, is the best place to get your thinking done. And you have to be sort of comfortable with just sitting in that thought and sort of facing down those things that maybe in your real life, quote unquote, you never really have to examine. So I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think what we found about ourselves is that we are lifelong travelers who want to go to new countries and experience new things, but we definitely really missed the work. We missed structure, and we missed friends, and we never really got fully into vacation mode because we were always sort of looking for something to ground us to a place. So
Yeah, I think I did a lot of kind of peeling back and looking at my inner clockwork and seeing how I tick. And I think I realized that like I do need to work, and I have a tendency to fall into the kind of things like situations like my job before. And it's something I have to sort of guard against, that I don't, fall into it and let my health deteriorate and like my mental health go to pot because I've decided to do this super stressful thing. But at the same time, I also have a need to do work that I feel is important, and that often can lead to that. And so I did a lot of thinking about how I'm going to be able to sort of balance those two kind of contradicting things in the future.
And a lot of conversations about, okay, when we do go back to the US, like what's actually important to us? Like what do we want to build long term versus I think before we left, we thought of everything in terms of like, well, we just got to do it. You just got to get through today. You just got to go to work, or you just got to, without really being intentional and careful to think about what it's all for, what you're sort of working towards. And, now that we're back and we had all that time to think on the road and sort of find ourselves, we are living much more intentional lives.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, is that it's really easy to not live very intentionally because the world will supply you with things to worry about and things to focus on that maybe aren't things that you would choose, but you sort
now
of
you're doing them and
choose them by
going.
default. And that chance to step back and look at it all and reevaluate lets you kind of calibrate and choose the things that do matter to you. Which it turns out like a lot of the things that I think do matter to us are sort of conventional things. Like we want to sort of settle down for a little while. We
want to move abroad.
We want to move abroad eventually, but we want to like
that's our new life goal.
We need to settle down eventually and have kind of rewarding careers, and save a lot of money so that we can travel in the future. So a lot of the things I think we ended up learning about ourselves and what we want for the future tend to be more or less conventional, but we're now doing it intentionally and not coming at it from the sort of default position.
It's, like you said, it's a different way to approach it completely, 100%. You could have the same exact thing. Like you could take the same exact job back and everything, but like if you're doing it intentionally, that's a totally different situation. Even if on the surface it might look the same, Let's talk about like coming home and this next step for you guys, this intentional choice to settle down. What are you doing, and like how did the travel influence those decisions? I guess we touched on that a bit, but let's hear what you're up to.
Here's like a kind of a preface. I think coming home can be just as jarring as leaving.
Yeah,
But we did it in a really like soft ramp kind of way. We flew from Paris to New York, spent like a week and a half in New York, which was so different from our regular lives that even though we were like back in America, it was different enough that it still felt kind of on the road. And then we spent about a month in the Pacific Northwest visiting friends. And so it was kind of this like nice off ramp of travel where we're kind of back in the country, but it doesn't feel like, man, we just like arrived at home. And then we spent some time traveling with friends, staying at their place. We were in one place for 2 or 3 weeks, and we kind of settled down, get back used to just sort of like American culture. And then we actually came home. So we took us like a whole month basically before we were actually like back home seeing our families. And I think that made it so much easier. I think it would have been really tough to just.
If we came back and immediately like went back into jobs. And
I had a friend that flew from like Shanghai back to Las Cruces, New Mexico, where he's from, where his family's from. And he said it was the most like jarring thing, that he spent like a week just like completely kind of freaking out because you just like get plopped right back in the middle. So we didn't do that.
That's true.
So the transition back for us, I think, was fairly slow and smooth, but it still was really strange. Like, I don't know. We went to a Walmart and I was just like,
yeah, that's right.
I couldn't handle it. I had to get out of the Walmart because it was just too much and so gross.
Yeah. Our first week back, we had to go grocery shopping for a fridge because we had a fridge that we put food in. And we were just like, what is this? Like,
How does the American culture seem different to you now, or does it seem different?
It seems really different. I think a lot of the stereotypes you run across about American culture ring a little more true. Like, we are kind of like this consumerism based kind of wasteful society, and we have all these like giant unnecessary things. Like when we went to that Walmart, I got the cart and I thought, this is wrong. I got the giant cart. Like, where's the regular sized cart? And no, it was the regular sized cart. It's just, it was super giant. It's like, how could you possibly?
They are comically large.
Yeah, it's really strange.
And that really is everything in American culture. Everything is so giant and so over the top and mostly unnecessary.
I remember I kept freaking out because, as you probably know, in Europe they don't give you the plastic bags, or if you want a plastic bag, you have to pay for it. And we were checking out, and the lady was like bagging and double bagging and like just taking bags out and throwing stuff in them, And I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a strange.
You're just noticing things you might not have noticed before.
Yeah, that I never thought about before. That like we're bagging 5 items, and now we have these 8 plastic bags where we had just come from Paris, where they're like, well, you're carrying it, or it's 50 cents or whatever the charge is for the bag.
And I will say, I think like American culture, at least back here in New Mexico, like because we're a more like rural state, it's a car-based culture. Everyone's in their own cars. You don't really interact with human beings as much in like a person-to-person way that you would even in like New York. You're smashed up against everyone, and so it makes it a little more isolated than I remembered thinking it was before. I thought that was completely normal, and now that I've come back, like there's a distance that I didn't realize there was before. And I think that that's kind of a bad thing about our culture.
Yeah.
Is that we have this built-in distance that kind of dehumanizes other people and keeps us from, experiencing people who are different than us. Yeah. And that is not a good part of American culture.
It's good to be aware of now.
Yeah, I'm much more aware of it, and you realize that leads to so many weird biases and fears that I think kind of are bubbling around in the overall American psyche. Yeah. I did find though, and maybe it's just that finally you're somewhere with a common language, that when I did bump into people, strangers, and did chat with them, everyone was super friendly. And that wasn't my memory of it before. I always thought of us as a little more standoffish.
Yeah.
And we were in a lot of places where people were very friendly, but coming back home, I would come home and be like, I just had a great conversation with a little old lady in line at the thrift store.
You felt like that way, like you were traveling again, like you had a random,
Yeah.
I personally think it's empowering, the idea of when you settle back down, or whatever words you want to use, whatever lingo, when you've done it before, like, you can do it again, right? So I don't think it's as scary to sort of get ties again when you've done it before and it's not as like intimidating to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're
perfect. Yep.
Perfect. In fact, we say all the time, if Teague's starting this new job, I'm thinking about starting a new career, and we say to each other all the time, if it ever gets to a point where we wake up and we're not happy, let's buy a plane ticket to Bangkok. Where some of the value of travel is that that you are never, or you're only ever as stuck as you choose to be, because you can do it again. You've done it before, and if you need to, the whole world is out there and it's waiting to sort of welcome you and accept you. And so, you know, we would never have the fear again of being entrenched in sort of a life that we're not happy in, because you buy a plane ticket and you go, and the rest sort of takes care of itself.
And I think that also gives like a kind of a takes away some of the unnecessary seriousness with which we often approach life.
Yeah.
Like you take yourself and your job so seriously, but knowing that, like, you know, if this all falls apart, like I'm just going to go back to Thailand and do Muay Thai.
We work in a hostel,
you know,
and we'd be very happy
and be so much happier than I am in this miserable moment. And just knowing that that option is there, and that there's all this adventure and stuff you can do in the world, you know, and that you're a person separate from your crazy job or whatever, that you can just, you know, it makes it, you take it a lot less seriously. You take yourself a lot less seriously, and everything isn't quite the black and white, I have to succeed in this or I'm a failure type of mental environment that you find yourself in.
Very true.
And so travel's always out there.
Yeah.
So the exit ramp strategy, I like that. If you're going to do like some travel in your home country,
Definitely.
maybe saving that towards the back end is a great tip to kind of reacclimate, if you will.
Yes, definitely.
What are some of the other tips you guys want to share to like a newbie nomads or people that are going on a year-long trip or a longer trip like this, as far as like, Sophia, you mentioned doing well with the flights, like whether you have some cheap flight strategies. We talked about Workaway, any budget saving tips, packing tips, anything like that. If you just kind of want to rattle off like a year's worth of wisdom for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll go to like my go-to things are, if you can, get some sort of budget planner on your phone. They have apps for it. We used Trail Wallet. I don't know if we can plug it or not, but we used Trail Wallet. It was really, really good. And I logged all of our expenses. It's really good for just keeping you on track and knowing sort of where your money's going. And they say, you know, some of the conventional wisdom is if you're not keeping track of what you're spending too much. For packing, I would say definitely carry on. Packing cubes. I don't know how anybody travels without packing cubes. Indispensable. I've traveled with 3 packing cubes, one for pants, one for shirts, one for underwear and bras and stuff. We did the 1 pair of shoes. Flights. If you are the type of person who likes to plan and peruse flights like I do, I just looked every day. You know, keep track of it, sort of keep the data in your mind. We used Hopper, Flight Scanner, Skyscanner, sorry, and Google Flights. Just every day I would just kind of look. It takes 30 seconds and you sort of know what your options are. If you find a good flight, I buy it. I'm a trigger puller. The chances that it's going to go down are, I think it only happened to us once where we bought a plane ticket and then 2 days later I got a notification that flight got cheaper, but almost always it gets more expensive. So, you know, my advice to people buying flights is, you know.
Did you have certain notifications set up?
Yeah. So on all those sites you can put notification, you know, give them your email and they'll send you notifications. In Asia, you can buy your tickets, you know, the week before, and it's fine. In Europe, I tended to buy our tickets 3 weeks or a month. Every so often, I could look 2 weeks or a week before, and it would be cheap. But most of the time, they get more expensive. Always flying out of major airlines, and if you're willing to fly in weird hours, those flights are always cheaper. So I would say to people backpacking for the first time, if you are capable of it, you know, plan to travel either early in the morning or late at night, because we got like $20 tickets from Paris to Venice. Our flight, I think, left super early or something. But
a lot of people ask about phone. What did you guys do for phone service?
We just took our phones, but used them just as Wi-Fi devices.
Okay.
Yeah, we never got chips.
No.
We never
got SIM cards or anything.
I got a SIM card in Vietnam, because I was going to be alone on a motorcycle. And
That's true.
I went on the recommendation from the hostel I was staying at, and the guy was kind of shady, and I thought this is kind of a bad idea, but I did it anyway. And my phone worked while I was in Ho Chi Minh City, and the second I left the city, it never worked again. So I didn't have it.
WhatsApp is a really good app that's internet based. You can download it onto your phone and it works without a SIM card or anything. And then if like Teague downloads WhatsApp or my mom downloads WhatsApp, then it's sort of like a text device.
Yeah, I use that all the
just
time.
uses Wi-Fi. Yeah, it's incredible.
We used WhatsApp. We used Maps.me.
Maps.me, I highly recommend.
Because then it just downloads the maps and you don't have to have any sort of service or anything.
Yeah.
And that worked really well. I mean, I navigated Vietnam using Maps.me.
You can pin, locations and send pins
But yeah, I mean, the phone thing may be worth it if you're going to be in one area, but we were moving around a lot and it was going to be pretty expensive to either get a plan that would work for that.
And the truth is that so many places have Wi-Fi now. I mean, Cambodia, little tiny, restaurants have Wi-Fi. Like, you're never really that far from Wi-Fi. So I remember that the phone thing was a great stress to me before we left, but once you get on the road, you're never more than 5 minutes from some Wi-Fi. So as long as you just have your phone and can connect it to the internet, if you have WhatsApp, if you have email, I mean, it's really fine. It's so much easier than you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a site you want to share or anything? Were you blogging about the trip or anything like that? Or
We're not currently.
Yeah,
we've been back for a few months, and I think, we don't really have. We have had an Instagram handle, but it'll be for our next trip.
Yeah.
That we're.
Well, you
we're
guys
planning.
are just here to share this whole experience, and I'm
we just missed you, Jason.
Well, I missed you guys. I was so thankful that we were able to hook up here this year plus later and catch up with you guys and do it all in one episode. This is like, you guys have made one of my dreams come true to like put an episode together like this. I just think it's really awesome to see and hear, I should say, your unique journey before that journey, before the journey that we talked about, and then now after. And wow, I mean, I know you guys have a million stories to tell, and we could keep going,
take hours
going on. But like, first of all, once again, congratulations on the engagement, on the trip.
Thank you.
Everything you guys have done, and it's so cool that travel's important to both of you, and now you've had these experiences together, and obviously that led to even more togetherness.
We made it. We're alive. We lived. You can do it. You can too. It's great.
Final words of wisdom, right?
Final words of wisdom. Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add to that?
Take a tiny pack. Get the backpack you think you need and get the next size down.
I promise you.
You're going to be so much
Your
happier.
pack's too big. Your pack's too big. I promise you. We would see people with like a backpack, a smaller backpack, and then like a tinier bag, and then like a purse. And it's like, I don't know what you have in there.
It sounds like one of those Russian doll situations.
Yeah.
If you're willing to just sort of let the vanity go and travel with a smaller pack, it makes your whole life so much easier. We did it for a year. I think, that would be like our most valuable piece of advice is just like carry on size. Teague used a Go Ruck. I used a Tortuga. So important. And,
you need so much less than you think.
Yeah.
And if there's anything you actually do need, they're going to have it wherever you're going.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I didn't think of that when we went. I thought I was like packing like I was going to the moon.
Yeah. No.
But you get, if I was starting again, I would just fly to Bangkok with like my passport and a toothbrush and just get everything there.
Nice.
But small pack. That's my number one thing. Small pack, one pair of shoes.
That's
awesome.
If
you can.
Okay, great. Well,
and have fun.
You guys shared so much. I mean, totally just honest, laying it all on the line on this podcast before and after. It's so great to catch up with you both, and I hope that you come through Europe again, at least when I'm here, or maybe I can come through. You guys live in New Mexico right now?
We live in New Mexico, but our long-term plan, Jason, is in the next 5 years to move to Europe.
Okay,
so
right
we'll come see you.
Well, I would like to come to New Mexico and get some warm air because it's cold here right now. But
you always have a place with us.
Yep.
Well, I hope we cross paths soon. And I really, truly appreciate your time. And thanks for sharing everything you have. And congratulations on everything. And welcome back home. And we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely. Happy travels.
All right. Take care. Cheers. have it. We just traveled through time and witnessed how powerful and transformative travel can be. And I want to say thanks once again to Sophie and Teague. They really kickstarted me in the direction of recording more episodes like this for you. Again, they take a lot of time, but well worth it in the end. And this was the first one. I hope you enjoyed listening to this highlight from the archives. 2 more things before you roll out of here. I got to answer that question quickly at the top of the show. How to use big picture thinking to accomplish all of your travel goals and more. Not to go too long-winded on this, but when I talk about big picture thinking, I'm talking about taking like the bird's eye view and looking at things as big chunks of time. And it's really easy to get caught up in the smaller picture, right? A good example of that is knowing when you quit your job to travel the world that the next week you're not going to have a paycheck, or the next 3 weeks, or the next 4 weeks. And that's scary. I mean, that you have to take that seriously. That's no joke. And I'm not saying this to downplay any of the small picture things that happen. But when you zoom out and you look at the big picture and you're working towards a vision or towards your dream or something else, maybe that big thing in the small picture becomes a small thing in the big picture. Another example might be when I took off to go to college. I didn't really even think much about it. I was just like, hey, I'm just going to go into this debt and spend 4 years at this school. And it's not like I regret it, and I value my education, of course, and I'm so grateful that I went and had the experience. And I think it was something I needed for myself. But at the same time, it's like I didn't even question it. It was just kind of what everybody did, and it's just what I thought I was supposed to do. And that's a huge chunk of time. And it's really easy to kind of just fall into those commitments just because it's kind of like, hey, that's kind of what you do, without actually taking a step back to think about the big picture and to question it. Is it really something you want to do? Is this the best use of my time? Is this the best use of my money? Is this the best place for me to be right now in my life? Just because it seems like the right thing to do, or society says it's the right thing to do, doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing to do. What if I took the same amount of money and, educated myself through online courses and used that money to travel? So I was educating myself around something else I was passionate about and working on that craft while I was getting a travel experience. I mean, there are a lot of different ways to do things, is my point. And getting caught up in the small picture and the minutia things can be a trap. It doesn't mean that those things shouldn't be taken seriously or those aren't real challenges to overcome. It just means that it's easier to make big decisions, I think, when you're looking at the big picture, and it's easier to create a vision for yourself as well. And if you think about it, I mean, if you imagine a foggy day and you're down on the ground, it's hard to discern where you're at. But if you rise above the fog, you get some perspective, and then you can see where it's clearing. Maybe you see across to the horizon and where it opens up or whatever. I mean, it's just a metaphor, but the point is it allows you to see your own vision and allows you to see maybe some potential solutions to challenges that you may not have considered before. So I like zooming out and taking that big picture thinking approach when I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with this next chunk of my life or whatever, because knowing and understanding my past and how I can now reflect on chunks of my life and how I've spent them and what it's done for me in hindsight, but I didn't know at the time. And there were certain things that were challenging at the time, but ended up being, good for me or helpful in some other way. Of course, it's hard to understand those things until you experience them. But either way, at some point, I think I figured out that thinking about the big picture was more helpful than concentrating on all of the various challenges of the present moment, or at least letting them overwhelm me to the point of inaction, So that's what it has done for me. And I just wanted to share some thoughts around big picture thinking with you today. Now, I've got to give a shout out to somebody in this community, and then I'll leave you with a quote. This is for Abigail, who wrote and said, "Greetings from Florida." She said, "Hi, Jason. My name is Abby. I'm a 21-year-old entrepreneur living in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm originally from the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. Recently started listening to Zero to Travel. Love it. I've gotten to where I listen to Zero to Travel more than I listen to music. Thank you for that. Hopefully you're listening to this now. She goes on to say, the podcast and your guests inspire me to travel and move abroad. Being from a very small conservative town, I grew up with the mindset that women could only be teachers, nurses, or stay-at-home moms. Little did I know that I was more than capable of traveling abroad solo as a female traveler through growing my self-confidence. I've been to 9 countries and planned my first solo backpacking trip. The trip was supposed to start in January 2021, but COVID got in the way. I was planning on traveling for 4 months all across Europe and going as budget-friendly as possible. Not a day goes by that I don't think about the travel experiences I was going to have. In lieu of the pandemic, I couldn't help but think that I am not meant for the typical 9-to-5 workday. Then I listened to your podcast more, and each week it eventually dawned on me about being location independent and being a digital nomad. So a lot of twists and turns here for Abby. She went on to actually say that she created a Facebook group for women to help build self-confidence. It's called Nomadic Babes, if you're interested, and just said some nice things about the podcast as well. So anyway, I wanted to give Abby a shout out just for kind of rising above the limiting beliefs of her conservative town and opening up and growing that self-confidence and getting out there and traveling. It's really cool. And now even paying it forward and trying to help connect others to do the same. So really appreciate that. Thanks for taking the time to write, Abby. And just always a gentle reminder here, I love to hear from listeners. I mean, I make this show for you. I'm not making this for myself. I'm standing here by myself in my little loft studio, but I'm talking to you. I mean, we're hanging. You are why this show exists. So please get in touch. Jason@zerototravel.com. Leave me a voice message. Drop me a line. Let me know what you're up to. I'd love to share these stories with the community so we can all help each other learn and grow. That's what this is all about. Speaking of learning and growing, I am going to leave you with a quote, and it's from a book I am reading. I mentioned that I'm reading a book. It's very appropriate to this episode because the book is called Transitions: Making Sense of Life's Changes. There's a revised 25th edition. So this is an older book, but really timeless. I'm reading it right now, and this is going to put a nice bow on the episode, I would say, because transitions happen throughout our lives. And this book has even illustrated some that are common to certain ages, and it's brought up a lot of questions, and it's made me reflect on some of the transitions I've made, not just my transitions to travel, but other transitions out of, say, a 9-to-5 job, out of being a nomad and into living a sort of regular life, transitioning to being married, to having children. It's all these things happening. And transitions are part of life. And if we can learn to manage them in a way that feels empowering to us, I think that's a huge skill, or maybe huge thing. I don't know if I call it a skill, but it could be an important thing to be aware of, knowing if you are in fact going through a transitional period now, what that might mean, and how to kind of treat yourself, how to think about the situation, what it means. There are a lot of questions, and I am actually going to be giving a talk at Camp Indy, our in-person event, which is going to be September 17th to the 19th in Kent, Connecticut. So please, I know not everybody's willing to get on a plane, but I mean, if you're willing to drive, if you're within driving distance of Connecticut, say Boston, New York, that area, or you just want to hop on a flight and come hang out with us. We got 300 acres, so we got plenty of room to space out, and we're going to be doing an adult summer camp along with some talks and education around this question of how to achieve time, location, and financial freedom in this new world, right? How to get that lifestyle freedom. And my talk is going to be about the power of transitions. That's one of the reasons I'm reading this book. And I wanted to leave you with, I told you I was obsessed with this topic, right? Of transitions. I am. I find it fascinating in my own life and in the lives of others. And I wanted to leave you with this quote that I just highlighted from the book the other day. And in the book, he says, finding out what it is time to let go of often provides the way to initiate a transition meaningfully. So he's talking about initiating transitions here. Unfortunately, people are more likely to ask what new thing they can add to their lives. Even though they may get an interesting answer to that question, they won't be able to use it to make a meaningful transition because people have to start with endings, letting go of whatever it is time to let go of before they can make new beginnings. If they fail, they find that even quote, great ideas and, quote, really exciting possibilities simply do not help them. So start with this question. What is it time to let go of in my own life right now? And I found that poignant in a lot of ways. Letting go of something, you can't really get into the transitional phase properly until you let go of the sort of phase that you were moving on from. And I'll leave it at that. You know, a lot of these things, obviously up to interpretation based on what's going on in your own life. And that's what I'd like to do here, is kind of give you some food for thought. Everybody's in their own different situations, having their own transitions going on right now or not. But you can take with this from this episode what you want, what's going to help you. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for spending time with this podcast and with me today. Have a wonderful day, smile, and make it a great one. Take care, and I'll chat soon. Peace and love to you.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.